4 steps to building an international freelance business. Welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. In this episode, I'm joined by Carl Chinnapen. Carl is one of the co-founders of EWI, and he's been responsible for a hell of a lot of the growth in their freelance international business. In this episode, he breaks down the 4 steps for you to be able to do this in your business. If expanding into international markets is on your agenda for this year, you have to listen to this episode. Carl, welcome to Amplifying Recruitment.
Thank you for having me here.
Do you know, it feels weird because I've never called you Carl. I've only ever known you as Chip. So it feels weird even saying that.
Yeah.
Carl, Chip, for anyone or people that don't know you, could you do like a 60-second intro? Who are you?
So hi, I'm Chip. Well, Carl. I'm from South Africa. Been in recruitment for the last 25 years. I'm one of the co-founders of EWI. I set the business up alongside 4 people in 2012, and I run our international freelance work all around the world.
So we've had Matt on the podcast talking about the inception of EWI and how that came about. Do you want to give your version of that?
Yeah, of course.
Because I reckon it's probably slightly different to his.
No, not at all. So I'm originally from South Africa. I moved over to the UK, young age of 21. I've got a book out, £24.50 in the tree. I'm joking. So I met Matt when I came to the UK. He was my first recruitment manager. We worked at a company called BBT together. We ran a local authority desk doing freelance work, and we instantly hit it off. If you kind of fast forward that to where we are now, we're now business partners, part of a really super successful international brand, EWI. And it's been a fun, entertaining journey with a couple of bumps in the road, but happy to have been so successful.
And where is, in terms of just, I suppose the size of EWI now, like where are you at? So you're like how old is the business? How many heads? Like GP, all that kind of good stuff.
So we are probably around 80 staff around the world. I don't know what our last turnover value was, but we're turning over tens of million in the market. International brand, offices based out in Poland, soon to be in Cape Town. An office over in Orlando, we've got an office in India. So, our market space and what we do is, directly the type of business we are. We are a global player in the energy, infrastructure, mission critical space. And that's what our business is. We are a global brand supporting international projects at a domestic level within those 3 markets and sectors. We're obviously part of the Engage group. For those that don't know who Engage are, they're $1 billion turnover. They employ 1,200 recruiters around the world. They've got 24 unique brands, which gives us a lot of firepower in terms of how we operate and work. And our customers can either see us as a 80-person organization, or they can see us as a large multinational brand doing lots of cool things in different places.
Are there particular types of customers or clients where it's more appropriate for you to position yourself as, hey, we're Engaged, we have 1,200 people, we've got all this firepower, and then when do you decide actually that you want to position yourself as, oh, we're EWI and we're still owner managed and all of that kind of stuff?
I think it comes down to the market spaces you work in. I'll take something like architecture that sits in the infrastructure field. You get big multinational brands with thousands of staff around the world, and what they want is a global player and a safe pair of hands. On the flip side, you can get small interior design companies in different places that want to have the personal touch, want to have one-on-one contact, want to know that the brand kind of mirrors what they are as an organization. So, we choose how we want to switch between those 2 different areas, depending on what's happening with the customer that we're talking with. I think, we're going to be talking about the international freelance world in a second. In this space, however, you kind of want to be quite careful how you operate, because you do want to work with the big blue chip businesses, which is when we use our parent. Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into that international freelance piece, right? So I've seen some businesses do this incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen businesses try and fail ultimately to try and build because I think it's complex, but you obviously know far more than I do. How do you build, I don't know whether this is too open a question, how do you build an international freelance business? If you could just do that in the next 10 minutes.
Right, I think the first thing for me is to get the 4 pillars correct. For me, there's 4 pillars for an international recruitment brand. The first thing, cash is king. Second thing, business plan. The third thing is you have to be agile. And the fourth thing is that you need to have a mentor and a coach to support you.
Okay, can we go through those one by one? Right. Yeah. So let's start. Like the first one, cash is king. Like what does that mean?
Right. So I think one of the failures I've seen from and this is both personal as well as speaking to my peer group that operate in the space, is that a lot of recruitment businesses just jump into the freelance market. The cost of borrowing has gone up, getting access to capital has become more difficult, choosing the right partners have become more challenging. So I think when I say cash is king, if you apply that to EWI, we've mobilized staff to over 100 countries around the world. Now, automatically, when you start thinking 100 countries around the world, you have FX. Because you're working with bigger customers, you've got payment terms, which means that by the time you outlay your cash and you collect it back in, you're incurring huge amounts of interest. So I think protecting your cash in the business and understanding when your client's going to be paying you, how you get access to money, how you manage your FX, all these things are massively important. And I think a lot of recruitment businesses that jump into the freelance world might be looking at this going, right, okay, we'll put out 100 contractors, but they don't actually think, well, those 100 contractors, somebody needs to pay them. That money needs to then be collected, and they then need to get their margin out of this. If their clients are paying them in 90 days, 120, 150 days, which is not uncommon for the larger customers, you're looking at a huge amount of interest that you've incurred. And this is when businesses start really choking. It's kind of, they go into the market, they maybe do some perm work with the customer, they supply loads of perm staff, they do very, very well. They go, right, let's go and build a freelance book. But what they don't think is that they've got their own fixed costs, they've got their own money which they need to manage, and suddenly now they've got effectively another wage bill which they're not going to collect straight away. So I think my advice to anybody moving into this space or wanting to do international freelance is just to make sure that you understand what your margin strategy is. Look at the fine details about FX, how you get your money in and out, banking restrictions and sanctions for different countries. Just the planning around cash is really, really important. We're very gifted at EWI because we've got a very cool team that support us. Andrew Birchall, our CEO, CFO, very clever man that's helped us understand that concept. So while we're an international brand and we can work all around the world, there's some countries we don't trade in.
So can I ask, how does that piece, and I'm going off at a tangent a little bit here, but let's say you've got a consultant that does some perm business in Argentina, right? And they make a couple of perm placements, and then the client says, actually, there's an opportunity here for you to come and place 10 contractors with us. I would imagine with their recruiter head gone, they're going, yeah, no problem, we can do that. Brilliant, I'll have your CVs by Wednesday. Boots on the ground by Friday. Because we're recruiters, right? So what does the process look like internally from they come to you and they're like, Chip, great news, pulled 10 freelance roles. What happens there between the recruiter, you, CFO, looking at governance and getting money in and out? Just what is the process there?
So we've got some very, very tight delegated authorities internally of how we can and can't do business in certain places. So I think the first thing is, can we do business in that country? Right, rule number one. So if you apply that to what's happening in the world now, I would have question marks about doing business in Israel, Ukraine, Syria, certain countries around the world. So I think the first thing is, can we actually physically do that country?
I think just for reference, we're recording this on the 9th of March, right? And so at this given moment, those countries, for obvious reasons.
I think the second thing is the currency that you're trading in. You want to make sure that this currency doesn't fluctuate. So you want to trade as much in stable currencies, US dollars, euros, GBP. What you don't want to do is trade in pesos and local currencies, because by the time you get your money out, you'll be hit massively with FX.
So can I just start, and this is my ignorance here, right? Because I've never placed someone in Argentina. This same client, this made-up client, am I saying to them, we're going to trade in US dollars?
Correct.
Excellent. Okay, so I can dictate that to the client.
Yeah. And I think that most companies who sit in the international space will have signed some kind of banking governance. And when you're talking to a company saying, I'm going to be billing in US dollars, 90% of the time they're saying, no problem. We'll go and use that first world currency and FX to do business. So FX is really, really important. Can we trade in the country is really, really important. The third thing is who the client is. So you want to make sure that you are doing business with a reputable company that you're going to get paid. So if this made-up company has one office in Argentina, employs 10 staff, and they want another 5 staff from you, you kind of need to be asking some questions about that, because that means that that company might not have the bandwidth, the resources, the cash themselves to payroll that staff. Because why would a company of 10 want another 5 contractors from you at 50% of their workforce being flexible workforce? Because, it just makes no sense.
So, and that's obviously an extreme, right? And I'm sure we go to the other extreme and go, they've already got 10,000 people in Argentina. They operate across 5 continents.
Correct.
Where, I would imagine some of this is the middle ground where you have to actually start asking some questions, right? And what does your
process look like?
Yeah, your process, your decision making there.
So with everybody that works for me, when we start looking at the kind of the plan, and I'll touch on the plan in a second, we tend to work with the same customers all around the world, because we want to work with reputable brands, especially on the freelance side, because of the amount of money that we're turning over with some of these clients. We don't have we can't just work at it with every kind of startup business. We can't work with certain subcontractors or subscale businesses, because the amounts of money that we're spending and turning over with these organizations. So I think for me, if a consultant had to come to me with an opportunity within our business, that opportunity needs to fit into my business plan. It needs to fit into the companies that I've chosen. It needs to fit into the profile business that I want to trade with. We're a private equity-backed business. One of my goals as being one of the founders is creating shareholder value. And through creating shareholder value, what I need to be able to show to my shareholders is, hey, I work with tier 1, the largest businesses offering contract and freelance workers around the world. I don't work with a local company that has got 10 staff working for them. So process internally, we first look at the clients. Right, is that a company that I want to do more business with? We then look at the job. Can I get the right level of coverage and insurance for that particular job? And will my insurers say, no problem trading with that? And the third thing for me is, how we get our money in and out of the country. There's lots of nuances in this market when it comes to cash and legislation, and I'm not an expert. I've got a really cool team behind me that support me with these things. But things like Argentina, there's aspects around withholding tax that basically means getting your money in and out of the country. There's lots of other things that you need to look at when doing business. It's not working in a domestic market. In the UK, it's 30-day payment terms. You're thinking about inside or outside of R35, but it's on your doorstep. You understand the local legislation to do business in that country. When you're doing this stuff internationally, there's a lot more that goes into it. It's not just putting out a contractor and kind of hoping for the best. We're super compliant. And I'll touch on the business plan, but stay in your lane is really important in our business. And we've got experts that stay in their lane that own certain topics, and one of them being compliance, another one being finance, that we have internally at EWI.
Is there and maybe this makes it easier because you're private equity backed, right? But if it was a privately owned business, I'd imagine that naturally makes it slightly harder because the risk appetite, the insurance, and all that kind of stuff. Are there things you can put in place? Would it be normal to say you want 2 contractors in Argentina, we invoice a month in advance? Like, do you have anything like that?
So I do have a story about this. So we worked with a brand name business of scale that unfortunately went into administration. And this particular customer wanted to have, 15 contractors on a particular site out in Australia. And we got money on account from them. And that was part of the negotiation. That was part of the discussion. Some of our due diligence internally is that, we go through a process with the client where we go and do background checks, where we go and do credit checks. We make sure that the company's tradeworthy. It's the basic things that you would do with any company. I would, if you are looking to do this, start small.
Yeah.
And do one. If it's a company that is unknown and the customer is happy to pay you on account, great. Always take it. But I wouldn't go and just put 10 contractors out in Argentina tomorrow if I've never done Argentina, never worked in the location, never done anything. I get this is how much money we can make, this is how great it's going to be, but I can almost promise you 99% of the time that does not translate to revenue.
Yeah, and I think that's the point I was trying to make, is that I definitely know I've been this guy where you pull those roles and you're there with your margin calculator going, this is amazing, without even thinking about all of the other things that come into play. Okay, so we've got cash is king. The next is a business plan, you said next.
The business plan.
Right, okay.
Right.
So what does that mean?
I can really thank our group CEO for two sayings that's always stuck with me. Tim Cook, ruthlessly focused and enable, facilitate and get out of the way. Right, so those two things kind of lead into the business plan. And in this business plan, you need to ensure that you've got everything captured that you want your business to go and do. And those things would be the market. So who are the clients and who are the candidates, right? You want to be very, 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 very specific around what you're doing, where you're doing it, who you're doing it with, how you're going to do it. Because of the international market space, it's very easy to get distracted and start doing lots of different things. The best companies are the ones that stay in their lane, focus on something small, become hyper-focused, become true experts in the market, not run off and do everything. So clients and candidates are really, really important. Choose the specific client and candidate. I think number two for me is hires. So this is a really, really obvious one. One of the things I'm really proud about EWI is how international our business is. We've got 18 different languages. We've got 24 different nationalities. We are an international business, which is really, really, it's amazing for me being from South Africa myself. But what that also means is it gives us the ability to operate with customers at a local level. We've got somebody that can speak Arabic, can speak to our customers in the Middle East. We've got individuals that speak French and Spanish. We've got offices in those locations. So when you're looking to hire, you need to make sure that your hiring plan fits into the markets that you want to work in. If you're hiring a bunch of individuals that are speaking English and you're trying to get them to do Argentina, you'll spend all this money hiring this big team, but if they can't communicate and can't get buy-in from the client and the candidates, that's not going to go anywhere.
I think there's levels to it, isn't there? And I think I've been fortunate enough to see inside your business and know lots of the team. I think maybe one person on their own might be able to have a crack at some broken Spanish, communicate, but actually for long-term, serious growth in those markets, you need to have language speakers, right? So just going back a little bit, so the business plan, we identify who we're targeting, why we're targeting, the locations, the exact job titles. What else forms that business plan?
Right, business rules for me is massively important. So business rules is everything. So if you could imagine, you're putting together this plan, and on this plan you've got markets, you've got hires, and you've got business rules. Business rules will be everything from activity, the candidate experience, the client's experience. If I just break down some of these things. So if I look at activity, so we've got a saying in EWI, it's called eyes off, individual zone of optimum function. And
sorry, say that again.
Individual zone of optimum function.
Okay.
And eyes off, basically what that means is that it's the desk rhythm. It's what the person needs to do to be successful. So if I can take this to an EWI context, we're working within a particular market space. We have a group of individuals who hunt as a pack to go after a market which we've chosen. We've chosen specific clients, we've spoken specific jobs, and then within that team, there's activity that team has to do, which is considered good every single week, and it's the same level of activity. Now, very often in recruitment, we fall into the trap of, you need to make 100 phone calls, you need to send 100 CVs out, you need to do this, you need to do that there. But when you start looking at those metrics don't really translate to good practice. It's kind of somebody going, oh, well, I logged all this stuff on my CRM and it looks fantastic, but that doesn't work if you don't have a bunch of people that kind of work the same way, do the same thing, follow the same business rules, treat their clients a certain way, treat their candidates a certain way. This desk rhythm and business rules to me is really, 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 really important.
Who designs those rules? Does that come from you? Does that come from the?
So I'm busy building a team at the moment who are focusing on a market space, and we got into our boardroom last week Thursday. We sat down and we all sat together, and we decided on what does the plan look like, who we're focusing, what are the milestones. Right, let's have a look at the business rules. Let's talk about revenue sharing. Let's talk about how what the activity is. Let's talk about, if a contractor phones you up and says, hey, this is a problem, how you deal with that there. Let's talk about our clients and how we treat our clients to make sure that we provide them the right information. All of these things, all of these encompassing things, we have documented internally at EWI. So it's not like a team is going and just doing their own thing every single week, but there's some very, 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 very clear defined rules that the team buys into, that they follow religiously every single week.
And is that like where you said the group of us all came building a team, we all came into the boardroom, is some of this, like these business rules, are they co-designed? So they're going like, I think this and I think this. Correct. And you go, well, actually overall as a business, we have decided this.
For me, this is also massively important. I think a lot of recruitment leaders nowadays kind of just dictate to their teams and say, these are the expectations. Look, there's a difference between minimum expectations and somebody doing their job to setting up a plan that people can buy into. And I think that the more buy-in you get in from the team, the easier the plan is going to be executed. And if everybody understands, this is what's required of me, this is where I'm going to be doing it, this is who I'm going to be doing it with, this is how I'm going to be doing it, it just removes the confusion. It removes all the noise, it removes the problems and the issues. It removes somebody running off and doing something completely wild. Everybody's kind of like super duper focused on what they do. And if I look at the other divisions at EWI, whether it's on within our permanent side, whether it's on our freelance side, all of the founders, Dan, Deji, Oliver, they all have something like this in place where their business works and operates in a certain way, which is on the back of something that's been planned with a collective, not a manager saying, this is the eyes of, this is what we're going to be doing, this is how we're going to be doing it. It's kind of everybody's had involvement. Obviously, you're going to push back and challenge, because if somebody says, I'm going to make 5 phone calls during the course of the week, you're going to say, well,
of course, yeah.
No.
Yeah. But I suppose when you've got a collective together, that doesn't happen, does it? Okay, so we've got cash is king, business plan.
Sorry, and there was one more thing I wanted to talk about on that, and I mentioned this earlier. Stay in your lane. Now, stay in your lane is really important for me, because in an international freelance world, we've got different things that require different experts. So when you've got a recruitment consultant, they are a salesperson. They're the one going and creating the opportunity, right? So great, you found the opportunity. You've spoken to the customer. They're interested in trading with us. They want to do work. Fantastic. We've also then got, as a separate department, a mobility and compliance team. Their job is to make sure that what we're doing is fully compliant. How we get somebody from point A to point B. Are they legally able to work in the country? Do they have the right kind of certificates and checks? Is that person going to be safe, secure? Do we understand what that person's going to be doing? We've got a finance team who operationally control our deals, and this is making sure that we're paying correctly, and this is making sure that we're billing correctly. A lot of the international world is purchase orders driven, so being able to track that information and speak to our clients around, hey, we quoted you this amount of money for the job is going to last this amount of time. If that job's extended, somebody needs to pick up the phone to the client and say, hey, you've reached your trading limit. Can you please uplift? Otherwise, you're going to have payment problems further down the line because you're going to be invoicing that money and you're not going to be able to collect it.
And that's a finance team that would look after that. That's their lane, right?
That's their lane. And then the last lane for me is our legal team. So I don't have a recruitment consultant trying to build a solution in Argentina, trying to sort out a purchase order. And then I don't know whether you can see what I'm doing here. Like you've got individuals, when they stay in their lane, they know what they need to go and do. They're not messing around and wasting time trying to go and collect cash or trying to book a hotel somewhere or book some flights or sort out a solution to get somebody paid in a specific country. Their job is responsible for go and create more opportunity to the market and focus on the plan of getting in with the customer, building a strong candidate network. That stay in the lane bit gets very confusing when it comes to a lot of recruitment businesses, because I often interview people and they say, well, I'm responsible for this, and this. Well, where are you finding time to do your day job then?
Yeah. Firstly, I think that stay in your lane, almost, when you first said that, it sounds like almost a negative kind of thing, but actually it's a real positive, right? Because it lets people be experts at what they're being paid to do. What advice would you give? So if someone's listening to this and they're a 3-4 person business and they're like, well, we don't have a mobility team and I do the finances, like legal is some firm that we pay a monthly retainer to. How does that work there?
I think you just need to be mindful then on what you do, where you trade, and how you go after work. So if we go back to the example we started with, that opportunity in Argentina, if I'm a 3 or 4 person operation, I wouldn't be choosing Argentina as my first location to go and trade out of. I would choose France or Italy or Spain or Germany or somewhere closer to home that you can operate and work. So again, it's exactly the same business plan, exactly the same process, except that part of what you'll be writing up is, if you look at your hires based on what you're selling, based on the opportunity you're creating, maybe hire number 2 for you isn't going to be another salesperson. It might be somebody coming in and doing your compliance. It might be somebody coming and doing your payroll and your finance. You're starting these things off small to build it up to get it going. Don't just jump in and go, I've traded with this client for 10 years. I'm a 4-person recruitment business. I'm suddenly going to put a bunch of contractors out in a space, and you might understand the space and market technically, but all these other things are going to be learns and a journey that you need to go through. Cool.
Okay. So we've got the cash, we've got the business plan. The next thing you said was being agile.
Right. Agile.
What does that mean?
So win, learn, change. I'm sure Matt would have told you win, learn, change.
Win, learn, change.
You need to make decisions quickly in what we're doing. If something isn't working, you don't have the liberty to let it go 3, 6, 8, 12 months. You need to go into it, and if it's not working after 4 weeks, you pivot and you refocus, but you need to do that on a regular basis.
And is that your time frame, 4 weeks?
It depends on the market. It depends on the market, the area, the section, the desk, the consultant, the investment. There's a number of different things, but I think the point I'm trying to make here is being agile in what you're doing is massively important. You can't just, I'm going to be focusing on this market and kind of hope and pray that it's going to be successful. If it fail quickly. Don't let it continue, because this ends up costing quite a lot of money further down the line. So back to that point about that startup business with 3 or 4 people in it, if they don't make decisions quickly, that business can drag on, and suddenly you're 6 months in the hole where you've payrolled the contractor, you've not collected your cash in, there's lots of pressure in, this is all real money that we're talking about. Make decisions quick and be agile about things. in that space, so if I look at the way that we capture some of our MI data, things like understanding what our weekly GP looks like, our monthly GP, understanding, what the conversion ratios look like in the business, our margin strategy, all these basic terms that you would hear in freelance, all this data is really, really important, because if something isn't working, we need to pivot, we need to do something quickly. We don't have the liberty to let that run a couple of months, because you're suddenly going to incur a huge amount of costs, you've got a huge amount of outlay, and suddenly you're then worrying about, oh my gosh, like, where's the money coming from? Yeah. What do I need to go and do?
Ironically, actually, I think that agility piece is maybe somewhat easier in a smaller business. That if you are 5 people, it's probably easier to be agile and go, no, we're not doing that anymore, we can change tact and we're gonna try something different. Sometimes in a larger business, obviously not where you are, because this is a mantra, it's win, learn, change. If you're living by that, I think that's amazing. Often larger businesses, you're constrained by, no, that's the track you're on, keep going and keep smashing your head against that wall until it breaks. I really like that.
I'm hoping that with the investment in understanding the money, having a very clear, concise plan and focus that the team have helped put together, that the agile bit should not really be an issue, because you would have done a lot of your homework before entering the market. Finding an opportunity in the market and building something properly with the right level of infrastructure is really, really important. In perm, you have the ability where you can go into a market space, you can go and make a perm deal. There is no outlay. There's obviously the cost of the individual that you employ, but in the freelance world, you're employing that person, you're probably paying that person commission on cash that's not being collected, you are outlaying a huge amount of money. You need to make decisions quickly if something's going to work or not work. But as I said, I'm kind of hoping that the other bits will not result in kind of a negative outcome.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a cash, business plan, we're agile. The last thing, mentor. You said mentor and coaching.
Yeah. Somebody like Jamie Burrows. On this I mean that there is a very cool community out there of senior people who have gone through this journey. And if we go back to that, you're a 3-4 person recruitment business, you want to go and build a freelance book. I'm sure most recruitment leaders wouldn't mind if somebody reached out to them and LinkedIn and said, hey, listen, I work in the teaching space. We're looking to build an international teaching business. I noticed that you guys work in the pharmaceutical space doing international work. Do you mind if I have a coffee with you and pick your brains about some ideas, so that when you start doing those first 2 things, cash is king and looking at the business plan, you can kind of go into there with some kind of understanding of what good looks like in the market, or how to do it, or what to think about, or where you maybe haven't thought about something. But I think choosing somebody to mentor and coach you through this process is massively important.
I think our industry's changed in that way. I think 15 years ago, you never would have had that. If you'd phoned another business leader and said, can I pick your brains about how you've been so successful? They would have told you to do one.
Yeah.
Whereas it's just not like that anymore, is it? I'm in several WhatsApp groups with business leaders sharing best practice, ideas. We've just had this huge win. And so I think that sort of stuff is probably more available than it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's obviously some common sense over here. You wouldn't go and talk to one of your direct competitors about what they're doing in the market, but certainly I know that just in my peer group, I met one of them the other day for a beer, and we're talking about changes that are happening in the world, and those kind of conversations are quite fruitful, because it makes you think about bigger picture stuff. It makes you think about is this going to have an impact on my business? Can I learn some cool things that maybe somebody else is doing that I would like to implement? These are quite important things.
I think, and it's interesting you said there about common sense and your direct competitors. But I met with someone last week that I would say is in a very similar space to you, and I know that you two chat. And probably not, we've just built this much with this client, but you'll talk about market conditions and what's going well, and a lot of that kind of sharing, right?
Yeah. Look, I think recruitment's recruitment. the challenges that we face in recruitment, I think, is common across every single industry. Working with difficult customers, working candidate short areas, getting your process sorted out correctly. All these things are kind of quite important stuff. So I think having conversations collectively, will have some value.
Okay, so we've got all four. So we've got cash is king, we've got business plan, we've got agile, we've found ourselves a mentor. Is there anything else that someone should consider?
Doing this is not very easy, right? And if you're going to go into it, there's a lot of research you should do before you go into it. It's not like working in a domestic market. It's not a straightforward journey. It is complicated, and you will probably end up having some challenges, or you definitely will have some challenges along the way. I think, you just need to go into it eyes open, and you need to go into it slowly. I wouldn't scale massively. I would make sure that you're understanding what you're doing, and then build a plan of having a piece of success. These markets that you're looking to operate are super, super competitive. You're not the first person. Recruitment was invented yesterday. You're not the first person trying to offer that customer freelancers. And if somebody suddenly wants to buy loads of freelancers from you and they've got a decent supply chain, you have to ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Is there a reason behind doing it? So I think, the final bit of advice I could give any business is do your homework, do your research, make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into, because just from the risk of this going incorrectly, this is how lots of recruitment companies feel pain when they don't have a margin strategy. They haven't worried about their cash. They've got a team that are doing lots of different things. They've got one person doing one market, another person doing another market. They're not sharing ideas together. I think these four pillars for me are kind of what makes this successful, and what somebody needs to go and do to create an international freelance business.
But there's, like you talk there about, like, that it's not going to be easy. There's going to be ups and downs. That's kind of recruitment anyway, right? What's the upside? Why would someone go and do this? What's the upside of having an international freelance business?
I think having lots of freelancers with a customer, that customer becomes a lot more sticky. And by sticky, it means that you have the ability to do much more with that client. If you think about perm, for example, you would go in and you would supply a perm person. That's your transaction done with that customer, right? So that if somebody else came along on the line and said, hey, I've got a particular good candidate, they could also do business with that. So a client could use you 1 year and do loads of placements with you, but they could use you the following year and do 2 or 3 placements with you. I'm not saying that perm's bad. I'm not saying that perm isn't the right way to do business, right? So don't get me wrong. What I'm saying to you is that getting access to more of that client's work becomes easier as soon as you've got turnover with them. So the upside for me is that the business opportunity to create more revenue from a client becomes a lot more not easier, but it becomes a lot more attainable if you start having large pieces of turnover. So with some of our big customers, we've got to the stage now where we're trading with them in 10 of their maybe 15 locations. I can now turn up and I can pitch that customer and say, well, look, I'm working with you in these 10 places. I'm not working with these five places. Give me that work, and they will give me that work. Or I'm looking to do this type of work for you, or could I sell you this particular solution, or can I give you this piece of advice? It just becomes easier to do work with clients. You kind of want both your perm and your freelance business to work in hand, and I genuinely believe the more freelance turnover you have with a customer, the easier is you're going to sell those other services, easier is you're going to get some of that perm work. So the upside for me is just kind of that stickiness with the client.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. Like I love seeing that side of business of contract and perm working collaboratively. Like we all do well when we all do well, right? And people feeding each other. What about when I say the upsides? What about the upsides to like shareholders, EBIT, company valuation?
So, part of the story which I've got the fortune to tell about EWI is that we work with tier 1 businesses globally. And because we've got turnover with the 3 biggest customers in the space, automatically that creates shareholder value. And that piece around shareholder value is that, if we went to any private equity company now and said, hey, we work with these 3 businesses and we've got this many contractors and we have this amount of turnover, it makes our business worth significantly more. I think having a pure play perm business is tricky, right? It's tricky, and I think that, I don't know if you've had lots of people in from the perm market space, but it's very often consultant driven. So the consultant leaves the business, so does that relationship, and so does that perm fee. It fluctuates quite a lot. I think with the freelance business, you've got that consistent revenue, you've got that turnover, you've got that stickiness to the customer, you've got that story you can tell. It creates more shareholder value. All of these things for me are upsides in providing freelancers.
Cool. Carl, thank you so much for your time today. If there's anyone listening to this that thinks, do you know what, I've got the first few bits ticked off, but I need a mentor, I'd love to pick someone's brain, how open are you to that?
Oh, of course. I'm active on LinkedIn. Just add me or send me a DM on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to have a chat about anything in the market.
Amazing. Thank you so much, mate. Pleasure to have you.
All right. Cheers.